Coming up today, furious over the government's labour reform plans, tens of thousands of unionised workers go on a nationwide strike. The government has labelled the industrial action illegal. As Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe prepares to address US Congress next week, a bipartisan group of congressmen in Washington urge him to address Japan's historical tensions with Korea for the sake of stronger trilateral cooperation. Plus, President Park Geun-hye arrives in Brazil for a three-day state visit. She'll be looking to strengthen ties and boost business opportunities for Korean firms in the world's seventh largest economy. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday, the 24th of April. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thanks as always for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this afternoon, tens of thousands of unionised workers in Korea upset with the government's plans to reform labour regulations have walked off the job this Friday. They say they will hold demonstrations and stay on strike until their demands are met. The government says it has no intention of backing down and has vowed to deal with the strikers in the strongest possible terms. Our Kim Ji-yeon starts us off.
The conflict between the government and labor unions peaked after they failed to reach an agreement on key labor reforms earlier this month. The Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, the country's second-largest umbrella union, says it'll lead a nationwide strike starting Friday. The umbrella union expects around 70,000 participants on the first day and around 200,000 over the next several days. The strike is being held to protest the government's push for structural reforms in the labor sector, which calls for flexibility in the labor market.
The move will increase the number of irregular positions, making it easier for companies to lay off workers and lower wages. We've decided to strike as the government pushes forward with such reforms, despite failing to reach an agreement with labor unions.
The union is also calling for a minimum pay hike from the current $5 to just over $9. It also wants an end to the government's plan to reform the pension system for public servants. Calling the action an illegal strike, the government says it will not back down on its labor reform plans. The Ministry of Government Administration and Home Affairs says it plans to charge 20 or so union leaders with violating laws and codes of conduct concerning public servants. The Education Ministry says it'll take disciplinary action against the heads of schools that allow their teachers to participate in the strike. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The Korean government says it will purchase an additional 77,000 tons of surplus rice in an attempt to prop up falling prices. Every year, the government purchases rice that exceeds the nation's market demand of 4 million tons. Last year, the government had estimated a yield of roughly 4.18 million tons, but the actual harvest topped that projection by 60,000 tons. Korean farmers had asked the government to purchase the excess rice, plus an additional 17,000 tons that had been stockpiled by local governments. A two-day early voting period for next Wednesday's by-elections opened this morning in 4 constituencies electing new lawmakers next week. The early voting system that was first introduced 2 years ago is aimed at raising turnout by giving those who are unable to vote on the actual day of the elections extra time to cast their ballots. Voters in the constituencies can pop into their nearest polling stations with their resident registration cards between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. this Friday and Saturday. Now, 4 National Assembly seats are up for grabs in these by-elections. One is Gwanak B district in Seoul, while there are 1 each in Incheon, Gyeonggi-do province and the southwestern city of Gwangju. 3 seats were left vacated by the dissolution of the ultra-leftist Unified Progressive Party late last year. The other was left empty after a ruling party lawmaker was sentenced to jail. Now, with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to the United States just days away, a group of American lawmakers have joined the chorus of voices calling for him to make a formal and sincere apology for Japan's actions during World War II. Connie Kim reports.
25 members of the U.S. Congress have urged Abe to squarely face history and formally reaffirm and validate conclusions expressed in Japan's previous Kono and Murayama statements. Both were formal apologies for the country's wartime sexual enslavement and colonialism. The lawmakers, a mix of Democrats and Republicans, issued the call in a letter to the Japanese ambassador to the U.S., Genichiro Sasai. A diplomatic source told Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency that the move is highly unusual, considering that it's coming from both political parties. Earlier this week at a conference in Jakarta, the Abe administration continued to deny state responsibility for the country's past wrongdoings. In his speech, the prime minister stopped short of an apology, instead offering an expression of remorse for Japan's involvement in World War II. This year marks the 70th anniversary of the end of the war, and victims of Japan's military sexual enslavement feel that an apology is long overdue. Speaking to the Washington Post, Lee Yong-soo said she was 14 when she was taken by Japanese soldiers. She's now 86 and said that Abe must face the truth of his country's crimes against women. Of the approximately 200,000 women forced into sexual enslavement, the majority from Korea, just 53 are still alive and waiting for Japan's apology. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye is now in Brazil, the fourth and final leg of a South America tour. Before departing Chile on Thursday local time, though, she checked up on Korea's Antarctic Research Station by speaking on the phone to its leader. Chae Sun reports.
Connecting to An In-young, the head of Korea's Antarctic King Sejong Station, by phone in Santiago, President Park Geun-hye acknowledged all 17 researchers' hard work in such unfavorable conditions.
어려운 환경 속에서 정말 고생이 많습니다. 그래도 임무 수행에 최선을 다하고 있는 여러분의 노고에 감사를 드립니다.
The president then asked about the team's well-being.
극한지에서 생활하는 대원들 건강도 걱정이 되는데 요즘 우리 대원들 생활은 어떻습니까?
Thanking the government and Korean people for their support, An said they mostly spend the winter season indoors, during which the wind chill drops temperatures to minus 40 degrees Celsius, but that they try to stay fit and active. The Sejong Station, which first opened on Antarctica's King George Island in 1988, studies climate change and organisms' ability to adapt to cold temperatures. A day earlier, Korea and Chile signed a deal to jointly study the Antarctic.
이번에 양국 간의 남극 정책 대화를 개시하게 된 점을 기쁘게 생각합니다.
The president then asked An to successfully lead her team's mission and ensure the team return home safely after wrapping up their work. Later on Thursday, President Park arrived in Brazil, the final stop on her South America tour. Meeting Brazil's first female president, Dilma Rousseff, for the first time, President Park plans to discuss strengthening their bilateral cooperative partnership and seek more business opportunities for Korean firms in the world's seventh largest economy. Chae Yu-sun, Arirang News, Brasilia.
Washington's top diplomat on East Asian affairs has emphasized yet again that North Korea will never be accepted as long as it is considered a nuclear state. In a statement submitted to a U.S. House committee hearing on Thursday, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Daniel Russell said the unity between members of the stalled six-party nuclear disarmament talks, except for North Korea, is stronger now than ever. Russell noted the trilateral defense information sharing arrangement between South Korea, the US and Japan, saying it enables Washington to better deal with Pyongyang's nuclear and missile threats. He added that the US alliance with its two closest Asian allies forms the bedrock of the six-party talks. The U.S. House of Representatives has adopted a resolution calling for the reunion of Korean Americans in the United States with their long-lost families in North Korea. Voice of America reports that the House Foreign Affairs Committee passed the resolution unanimously at a plenary session on Thursday, just 2 days after the bill was submitted. The resolution was jointly proposed by 21 representatives from both the Democratic and Republican parties, including Korean War veteran Charles Rangel and the committee chairman Ed Royce. The resolution stresses the need for a reunion to be realized as soon as possible, with the number of elderly Korean Americans yearning to meet with their long-lost relatives in the north dwindling by the year. Russia's ambassador to South Korea has been sharing Moscow's thoughts on a range of issues with the local media here in Seoul. The envoy says he expects North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to travel to the Russian capital in a couple of weeks' time for a big war anniversary event there. And he also raised the prospect of Russian involvement in the two Koreas' joint industrial park. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will likely attend the Victory Day celebrations in Moscow next month. That's according to Alexander Timonin, the Russian ambassador to South Korea.
His participation was confirmed maybe through diplomatic channels, the details of which aren't always disclosed.
Russia has repeatedly said that Kim Jong-un will attend the May event, though Pyongyang has not made an official comment. President Park Geun-hye declined her invitation, citing a scheduling conflict, squashing hopes of a meeting between the two leaders. Speaking to reporters in Seoul on Thursday, Timonin hinted that Russian investment in the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex was imminent.
A lot of projects are underway. One of them was proposed by a Russian Korean. It has to do with food products. More information will be given once a deal is reached.
The Russian envoy said Seoul and Moscow are also in close talks about building a gas pipeline that would run from Russia across North Korea to South Korea. But he also reiterated Russia's opposition to the possible deployment of a U.S.-made missile defense system to South Korea.
We oppose the deployment of THAAD in regions close to Russia.
Timonin, who also served as the Russian ambassador to Pyongyang, urged the two Koreas to resume talks as soon as possible. He expressed hopes that the two countries will find ways to approach and work with each other. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, U.S. tech stocks closed at an all-time high on Thursday. The Nasdaq index rose nearly 21 points, or 0.4% from the previous day to 5,056, pushing it above a record set 15 years ago. The gains were driven by demand for Apple's smart devices and Facebook and Google ad dollars. The last record was set during the height of the dot-com boom in March 2000. That bubble burst 2 years later, causing the Nasdaq to hit a low. But it's since surged over 350%. Experts say it's in better shape now in terms of earning power and quality of the listed companies. The index, which is home to tech giants like Amazon and Microsoft, now includes biotechnology companies, and analysts say there is still more room for it to rise. Arirang TV has sealed yet another exchange deal with a South American TV network. The latest agreement with a popular Brazilian channel comes hot on the heels of a similar deal signed earlier this week with Peru's largest TV network. Our Park Geun-hye filed this report from Sao Paulo.
Arirang TV is taking greater strides to enter the South American TV market, adding Brazil to its list of partnership countries. Korea's global broadcaster has sealed an MOU with Brazil's Hatchi TV that will explore opportunities for joint production, program, and personnel exchanges. Established in 1999, Hatchi TV is considered a relatively new player in the Brazilian TV industry, but is known for its creative contents aimed at younger viewers. It's also far-reaching, with the channel's transmission range covering 85% of the country. Arirang TV and Hatchi TV, which means network in Portuguese, will also focus on exchanging contents on the business front and on ICT trends.
We believe Asia is the continent of future where tradition and technologies coexist. We are particularly interested in Korean TV contents like K-pop, which is taking the world by storm. We are also eager to exchange news coverage, which will enhance our journalistic scope.
President Park Geun-hye's visit to the country this week is also expected to pique the Brazilian people's interest in Korea. There are thought to be around 250,000 fans of Hallyu, or the Korean wave in Brazil, accounting for a quarter of all Hallyu fans in South America. Arirang TV's latest exchange deal with Brazil's fifth largest broadcaster will further expand its reach to the rising number of K-pop and Korean culture fans here on the South American continent. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News, Sao Paulo.
Well, those are the stories we have for you on this Friday lunchtime in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out our website, arirang.co.kr/news, and do download our smartphone application. Just search for Arirang TV. Hope you have a great weekend. Goodbye.